trying to be cool guy.
I'm gonna have to question. So if it's like, yeah, we give them the rules and they're consistent, doesn't matter. But if we're gonna give them the rules, they're gonna be fucking rules, you know.
It's just like, why not give them the rules? You know, take control.
Because it would make, if we give them rules in their Cloudinary account, it would make their file names inconsistent with everything else that they've done. Is my concern. And if I was running that show, I wouldn't want to have like 2 different formats, 2 different areas. I don't even know if they care. So.
True, but they actually don't. They don't know what they're doing. There's no consistency. Let's be the consistency that they're looking for.
We have a Sam. Sam H.
Hello, everyone. How are we?
Hello, Sam H.
See, I was thinking about this. Some people are going to say H and some are going to say H.
It's pronounced H. H.
I trust you to have a strong opinion on this. Leaning right into the camera.
You're Kiwi. I'm not going to listen to you.
Think about how much time you're going to waste over your entire lifetime saying H. It's like you're going to have like a day of breath that you would have wasted on that, on your deathbed. Think about that.
It's all good.
So welcome, Sam.
It's chill.
Yeah. We got time to spend.
How is the zoo?
Zoo was good. Seems like there's some pretty big ideas coming in from Charles, which I'm excited to see come to life. Seems like everyone's got their work cut out for them over the next couple of weeks.
I thought it was like, what happened at the zoo? Usually it's like a presentation on graphic design. This just sounds really intense. What happened?
Introduction to a new animal, sounds I guess.
That's a new animal at the zoo, apparently.
A proposal for a new animal, I think.
Oh,
Coming soon.
okay.
Can I a little let fly?
Oh, so what distracts you?
I don't think so. Oh, I'll just mute. Ooh. How should we do it? Should I go upstairs then? I'll go upstairs. But then you can't hear people. Oh, the logistics. Sorry, guys. I'll go upstairs. Please stand by. No, that's okay. I'll see you guys soon.
There are just so many shortcomings in the real world.
You do a little house tour. Is that better? Nice. Hello all. Welcome to my fig jam. That I made.
Hey Jessie, great to be here.
Yeah. That I made mostly this morning. So very exciting. Do you guys have the link? Here's the prototype link, which is probably what you need. Ooh, the lighting is nice up here. Okay. So can everyone see that? Oh, should I share my screen?
I guess because we're recording, you probably should.
Yeah, actually. You're right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Cannot share screen.
Joseph?
Would someone else be able to share their screen? I don't think I have permission.
I can share.
Thank you. Hi, Joseph.
Hello, Joseph.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's that's my full name. I don't get that very often.
Hey, Jared.
Oh, hey.
What's this? Could you close the sidebar, please? Thank you. Okay, so yeah, my Figma my Fig Jam is going to be on motion systems, which is exciting. So I guess I'll be talking about motion as like systems wise rather than like an explainer video or like like a full animation, which I'm sure you all know about. Oh, that's weird. It does a smart animate transition. Okay, so yeah, so we want to think about motion systems as like a holistic thing, as like an element of the entire brand system, rather than well, that's what this talk is about, rather than like motion principles like stretch and squash or whatever, those kind of design principles. So I put the Star Wars thing as like, because when I think of like iconic motion that you can just like instantly recognize, I think of like Star Wars transitions. So why do we use motion in our brands? And what are the main building blocks? I probably won't go through all of them because there's so many. And maybe like an example of how other brands have dealt with motion in their systems. So why do we use motion in our brand identities? Well, I think obviously because it looks really cool, as you can see. And you can accommodate more content or more information. But I think the most important thing is motion allows you to sort of access this new level of communication where you can like tell a story or express your brand values in a new way that like a static image just can't, or you still can, but like it's probably more like more effective. The main, I think, yeah, I was doing research on material design, and they break it up into three ways that motion is used, and or like three reasons. And the first one is to educate. So things like informing the user, explaining or showing spatial and hierarchical relationships between different elements on your screen, you know, like guiding you basically, and like telling you what buttons you can press, which direction you should scroll, what happens if you click this. And yeah, like in this example, I guess it's teaching you where the shopping cart is or something. Focuses, basically this, you'd use motion to, yeah, like focus on a particular element on the screen, because there's usually a lot of information in one screen, and this helps the user sort of minimize fatigue, minimize confusion. So it should never, I guess, like overcomplicate things, or like, yeah, it should always be used like in a thoughtful way. And lastly, I think this is an example of like, this is where you get creative. This is probably what we think of usually when we're talking about like motion and brands. This is where we get expressive. You can add this is where we add personality. And yeah, like as you can see from these two examples, like they convey very different things. Like the first one is like, you know, bitch. And then the second one is like, fight me kind of vibes.
What was the first one again, Jessie? Sorry, just out of interest.
Goodbye. Next one. All right. So productive and expressive are like the two categories of motion that IBM uses, and they express that they've sort of said that like productive motion is more, I guess, what we were talking about, like educational and informative, whereas expressive is, yeah, it moves more. So I feel like this productive side of the spectrum is more about efficiency and responsiveness. So it's about being decisive. I guess for this dirt example, like the transition is a bit more like expressive, but I'm maybe just like the first bit is like the productive bit. So it evokes feelings of confidence and smartness. It's like very intentional, whereas like the expressive side is more a moment to sort of, yeah, you know what I mean? To sort of break out of that and like be a bit more funky, spicy. Remember intention. So what are you trying to say with your motion? Why are you even using motion? Like, do you have to? And how does this help convey, most importantly, like your brand values and tell a story? So for dirt, I guess I'm using dirt, so it's like dirt is like my whole lamb world. But like, I guess one of the principles would be like fluidity, because it's always like shifting and changing, always building. So that would be an example. For this one, I think this is by Monica for Coinbase. So I guess there's, I don't know, you can, what do you guys think this is conveying? But I'm not sure, but like it looks pretty cool. Another example would be if the motion was moving upwards, maybe it's representing brand progressiveness or yeah, like excellence. Consistency is about being comfortable, like the user being comfortable and like nothing unexpected is happening within the sort of rules that you've established for your brand motion. It should almost be like invisible when you're like scrolling through a page, but not like jarring. So the building blocks of, there's so many building blocks. I'm only going to talk about timing and easing. So timing is the duration or the time it takes for like one action to take place. And this should be appropriate for the situation. So like, for example, if you're animating a menu, it shouldn't take like 5 seconds to like drop down because like time and attention is precious. So this is from Design Systems. I thought it was a really good graph of the like different ways you can apply the productive expressive kind of principle to time. And similarly, like we're very familiar now with like using H1 and H2 and D1 and D2 in our type rules. But we don't really do that for motion. I think that's not as common yet. So this is a really good way of like, yeah, like T5 or T4 or T3 for different kind of uses depending on what you're using. So here are some examples, like a looping animation might be a bit longer, or if you're just like pressing a button, it should be really quick. It should be a productive animation rather than expressive. And the next one is easing. And this is the relationship between time and space. So when you're like, this first one here is linear, which means it's just like a straight line. And I feel like when you see linear animations, it feels a bit tacky. It feels a bit like unfinished. So yeah, I think ease is where you find your vibe. So that might be, you know, like if it's a tissue brand, it might be like soft and fluffy, or if it's a sports brand, usually it's very quick and like snappy. But yeah. And I guess like we're already thinking about these for a lot of our projects. So for Element, Dog was asking how bouncy or elastic do we want these animations? Does it need to be springier? So these are all things that we should think about for every project. And effects is another building block, but there's so many things you can do. Like this includes like color and scale, elevation, opacity, things like that. So I think once we have all these, like we have time and ease and effect, I think we can start building like a motion library, and you can start building like the building blocks and create the rules, the motion rules for your brand. You might also want to do a motion audit for your brand, which is when you kind of go through and see, like notice patterns like timing, when you use what kind of animation. That's like the stuff we talked about before, like expressive, focused animations or informative animations. Choreography, which is when like multiple elements are moving at the same time across the screen. And those effects from before, and you know, other things to know is like, where does it feel too static, or where does it feel too heavy and overwhelming? A really good example that I really love is Vivo's brand guidelines. So if you just follow me to their brand site, they have no, okay.
You're on mute.
Okay, God.
Yeah. Mine's bigger. Oh, but no, she needs to present.
Let's just.
Let's just leave it to Jessie.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Sorry,
Yeah, you put it there, and we'll just like stare behind. Can you hear Jessie, everyone?
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a real exciting moment.
Yeah. Whoa. No, I'm trying to not giggle.
I need to remember that for like when I need to tell someone off, you know?
What do you mean? To have like
Just
a few
come in.
microphones?
Yeah, just have like that fucking echo on there. You're on mute.
Anyway, I can't concentrate. Okay, so Vivo has classified their motion modes into these ones on the right. So add.
Hang on,
Oh,
yeah,
at-
sorry.
They're looking at
Mona's just
Sorry,
jumping in.
guys. Oh, my brain. Okay. These ones on the right here: add, amplify, pan, loop, and cut. And
Who's this?
oh, can you see? Oh, is it?
Is this
Mona?
Mona just like,
It's Mona. It's Mona. Okay, it's not me. It's not. I should just leave. Okay, so yeah, so these are different rules that Vivo has established that they use, yeah, like very consistently. So we've got add, we've got amplify, we've got pan, and I think I just really like the way that they've done like a GIF or GIF, however you pronounce it, for each one. And oh, thank you for pointing. Yeah, so just like showing all the different combinations that you can use. Thank you. Oh, how do I go back?
So
we're in
you
there.
probably need to go
awesome.
back to yours
Yeah.
because everyone's following you.
Oh, I see. Yes,
Yes.
that's all right. I understand
Yes.
now. So can there be too much motion?
No, you need to follow Jessie.
Mona,
Again,
thank you,
think.
Mona.
Please. And thanks.
Thank you. So I found this website the other day which I showed
Well, I was actually in there.
which I showed Louis, and it was really interesting because, like, I don't know, I didn't really like it, but you guys can have a look through and tell me how it makes you feel, or like what's good about it and what's bad about it from the different elements that we've just discussed.
Hang on, mate. Do you want to share the link?
Oh, it's in here. It's in here. You can click on it. Oh wait, no, you can't click on it because we're sharing a screen.
We have made...
It's just
Wait,
like-
wait, can Louis just share her screen?
Yes.
That might
Yes,
work.
yes, yes, yes.
What's okay?
There we
Please
go.
hold. No,
Please
it's
hold.
not there. I've got this.
This is the most.
I would love to know what Sam thinks about technical capabilities as an agency.
There's so many.
Every
actually
client
quite
presentation is like
impressed.
this.
Every client presentation, 100%.
Yeah, this is how we run all of our meetings, pitches, the whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you scroll through it, like, what do you love? What do you hate about it in terms of the motion?
I don't like the lag on the cursor.
Mm.
The text.
It's like a second behind where I want it to be.
Oh my god.
What did this say?
Forgot about
Missed
that.
it.
But
Yeah, no, I think because the design of the website's so quite unconventional, right? It's scrolling in different directions. Combined with the lag of the mouse, like it feels like you're not really in control sometimes. You don't really know what's happening.
Yeah, I also just
This
feel
is-
like, oh, closed demo. I was going to say, how do you just get back to the start? I feel like with most websites, I want to be able to get back to the home page, but this is probably more of a hierarchy thing. But
Yeah. Like, well, it's just a demo of.
you feel like, I don't know.
I reckon the way that the hover state comes in on the button relative to the way that your cursor entered it, though, is pretty rad.
Mm.
On the big arrow thing. Yeah, that one.
But is it? This
Pretty
actually crashed my mobile phone because it was so much like, I don't know, RAM or something. Actually killed it.
There doesn't seem to be like a reason for the movement. Like,
Yeah.
especially on that very initial loading, I don't understand why all the text like comes in and then one of them sits above the others, and then they all kind of like disappear at different times. It's kind of like, it's just hard to follow. It's super fucking hard to read.
It's the definition of like not a one-trick pony, right? Like it's like got 90 tricks. Like look at all of these things are like enough for one. Like just break that off and use that for your next client, mate. You know, like you'd be stoked with any one of those things baked into whatever you're doing. But it's like every time you scroll, you're like, oh, and now there's a new way of showing
But
you
also,
this. You know,
this is made for doctors, and I just don't see doctors spending time on a Flash site. They just want to get in and get out.
Was that supposed to be a doctor, that dude? In the brown suit.
What are you saying,
Yeah.
Blake?
Doesn't
Do you know what? Do
read.
you know what this? Do you know what this looks like to me? This looks like some like one or two people in like Estonia or something, like the best web dev agency and design agency in Estonia, just going like absolutely bonkers at one thing, and the client just being like, "All right, mate, all right." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone who's a quarter Estonian, I'm not sure how I feel about that comment. I'm not. And I 100% agree with. I 100% agree with you. It's got zero connection to the audience whatsoever, and then it's just full of these cool dev tricks.
What's that?
Like one click updates and he's like ecstasy or something.
Has anyone read anything on the site? Like,
No, like what are they selling?
I haven't read anything.
Data entry, data sharing made simple. It's literally about taking
Simple? There's nothing simple about it.
I think it's a product for like going paperless as a doctor's agency. So it's like Mind Body Online, but the doctor's paperwork or some shit like that. But like,
it's kind of ironic though, right? That this whole thing's about effective communication, like paperless notes, and then this is the website they create.
yeah, like doctors would not give a flying fuck about this. Eh?
So, Jessie,
That is very
doctors as a category, they actually have a paper or like have it taught to them about the importance of legibility of like when they're writing notes, because they have notoriously bad handwriting as an industry, and so maybe this site actually reflects what it's like to try and read a doctor's handwriting.
They've done some really deep research, and they're like, yeah, doctors are borderline illiterate. Like, no one can read what they're doing.
Like, I'm the pharmacist, and this is what I have to deal with. Like, am I gonna get on the right track? Who knows?
Jessie, you know how you had that idea of. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Sorry, we're getting really distracted by the
trying to like find all the Easter eggs.
trying to understand. Yes, Danny.
I was going to say, you know how you had that idea of productive and expressive earlier in your talk? So like one of the things that I was interested in was like, does that always map to like productive is always interactive and expressive is usually non-interactive? You know, like a video is usually the moment for expressive, whereas productive is more for like interactive pieces like UI. And I was like wanting to think, oh, wouldn't it be cool to see how far you could push expressive into interactive? And I think this is just a really good example of someone just trying to bring expressive into interactive and it not working at all. So like maybe sort of answers my question that I was going to ask you, which is like, can you ever lead with expressive in an interactive sense? Which is like maybe.
I think you could, but you just have to do it like once and then get somebody used to it, right? Like I read this like metaphor or this explanation of like bad science fiction years ago. Where they're like, good science fiction is that it's like it changes one rule about the universe and then like stories flow on from there. Like bad science fiction and or fantasy is like changes one rule about the universe and then like halfway through the story just like changes another rule and just changes another rule as well. Now there are dragons, and that's what this kind of feels like. You know, like you could get away with like pushing expressive into productive, but like once you teach somebody that trick, you can't then pull the rug out from underneath their feet again, right? Because you're just like, oh God, I just got here, and now you're doing this to me. Fuck.
I think it like relates to like how we've been trying to like lay out the website. You know how we had the structured and the bold dynamic like components and stuff. Like I think that was kind of partly on us trying to figure out like, well, we don't want to bring in like crazy motion like everywhere. But we want to do it we still want to give it space in the bold dynamic components, like maybe every one or two components in the page, and then the rest needs to be like really solid and just simple. I think that's kind of like what we're thinking of it as well.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah, I think this is like a perfect example of not. This one, Lens, is a perfect example of like not understanding your audience, and then also not understanding how motion should play a role in their mindset or what you're trying to get them to do. Like if you just want them to sit back and watch something, great. if you expect them to like lean in and process information, like then it becomes kind of like should be used much more sparingly.
But like, it's not just motion, right? Like completely agree with you.
Well,
Blake,
this
but it's not
isn't just
motion.
like this is just terrible. This just misses the mark in general. But,
Well, but like,
actually, that's a good point. Like Jesse, do you think kind of like how do you use motion differently between when someone's like sitting back and absorbing information for the first time, and then you want them to take an action versus like when they're actually like leaning into here's info I want you to absorb and remember.
I guess I guess that's like limit the amount of motion. Like you don't always have to have motion, or it's just like really quick kind of entry motion, and then that's because like for this example, like I couldn't even really properly read it because it was just like flying everywhere and like spontaneously appearing. So
Yeah, maybe it's like motion is a reward, not a punishment. Like in this website, it feels like I get punished for doing stuff, whereas like motion in an interactive context is best when it rewards me for doing something.
Yeah. I also feel
I think that's the.
Oh, you go.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think that expressive motion feels a bit like the brand talking to you, and then productive motion feels like you talking back to the brand because you're doing things. So you want that to be efficient. But I'm just thinking about, when you go to a website and then you need to go back to the homepage and they'll have some sort of motion there and then you have to like sit through it again. And it's like someone's introducing themselves to you and you're just like, oh my God, shut up. There are times when it's talking and taking up space. And then there's other times when you want to be leading the conversation. And so there can be like quirks and personality in that, but it very much has to be out of the way at the same time.
Yeah.
I think there is like, I think motion's not the only culprit here though, right? Like this kind of looks like, those roundup articles of like design trends of 2021 or whatever. And it's like type on its side is still a thing. And like, big ass buttons with like an arrow and whatever is cool, and they're just like, cool, we're gonna cram the entire buffet into this.
Yeah.
To your point though, like what's being said there, that it should be like a reward, not a punishment. This site here hasn't changed for years and years, and like I don't love these guys' work. They do something quite similar to this stuff, I think, and that it's like over designed and a bit kind of like geeky design wise. But I very much think that like because they've limited this like initial piece of motion, you do get it as a reward for kind of like continuing to engage with it rather than just bashed about the face with a punishment, right? Like, so like if you hold that thing, you kind of learn that like, oh, cool, something else happens.
Oh my God, that's
You know what I mean?
That's what we kind of having. This is very extra.
How can you do this?
It goes hectic, but I think if you like, if you let go of it, it just goes back to where it was, I think. Yeah, see? So like you need to drive it in order for it to happen. It doesn't happen to you,
Right. And what's super
It's
interesting?
still too much.
I can't hear you. Sorry. Over the music. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
I think I like it
But
because
you know what I mean?
you have more control over the movements.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a reward for like engaging.
It was referencing the annual awards website there, right? Which I think is a good example of punishment, right? Because, right, I'm sure we all spent a lot of time interacting with that site and like did a thing and then had to wait for 5 seconds for it to get to the next bit of the site. Like,
yeah, that was a terrible fucking site, eh?
So punishing.
I think I got.
This is so long.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I bring this up not because it's a good example of like design or development, but because it commits what I think are a lot of the same trespasses, but does do the reward not punishment thing. It puts you in control and only gives it to you if you keep asking for it. You know what I mean? Like if you keep going back, not to victim blame here, but it's kind of on you.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand that. That's cool.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, when you were talking about, I'm interested in ease and the idea of linear motion. And I'm wondering if like an example of that is what Zoe did for TLDW when like they all come in at the same speed. Is that so that's like
that's
linear.
what it's like. Yeah.
Like after doing a bit of research and looking at the references, it's like a key
Yeah.
kind of style is that they just hadn't invented easing yet. Everything is just linear, and it gives it a very particular look.
Yeah.
Does anyone know why linear, like a complete lack of easing or like linear easing looks so wrong? Why it's so problematic and looks so tacky?
I feel like it's just because it's not natural and
It's not physics.
yeah.
It's not physics, that's right.
Newton.
That's right.
Yes.
Because it doesn't take into account friction, right? So if you were to look and like, if you were to push something through a vacuum, there'd be no easing and it would be fine. But friction creates drag and drag creates ease.
Mm.
It's all
Yeah.
physics, Newton. It's all physics.
Cheers, guys.
So yeah, I feel like that's mostly it. But my last slide is basically just prompting basically what we were talking about in Design Zoo. Like how do we think about motion for lamb and like where have we used motion, I guess, and like what are our motion rules? But yeah.
We did these 2 meetings in the wrong order, didn't we?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
No rules. So that's the end of the meeting.
Does anyone?
That's how we were saying we'll do a sprint for like the land side.
Yeah.
Like when do you reckon we would bring it, like start considering the motion or like?
Yeah, that's something else I was thinking of. Like in the design process, like when do you start thinking about motion? Like for me, so often, like when I'm doing concepts, I'm already thinking about how something can move from the beginning. Because I feel
As
like
you should be.
yeah, I feel like so many brands kind of just have it as like an afterthought. Like how can we make our logo move like afterwards? Yeah.
It's I mean it's always been foundational to us, right? Like that's how I've always thought to pitch brands, even before we could properly animate and we were doing it in Keynote and shit. We'd still like present creative directions as like storyboards, and we'd do like hokey little animations and shit that'd be fucking awful, but like, you know, the idea was that like this is going to have to live in a digital context, so we need to think about how it moves over time. Dog, I don't know if you remember like our OEG initial brand presentation that we then like did it to like the board of OEG, and then like Toby and I traveled around the country and like presented it to like little auditoriums full of people, and it just had like shitty Keynote animations in it that like Flick had done or I had done or something, like I don't know, just people who weren't animators had done, and it was like looking back on it now, it would be like a pretty embarrassing time compared to like what we can do. But like the point is, thinking in that like fourth dimension is really, really important right from the start, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like we've already kind of explored some of that, like with your cool little like glitch, like, you know, when the letters are changing in the font. I feel like that's like how can we make motion tell the story of like always beta, and I think that's just something we need to explore, and like how can we incorporate it in our system so that it's always consistent.
Yeah, and for context for everybody else, like that's what we just did at Design Zoo, was like talk about how we bring motion principles and like an always beta idea into the kind of the next iteration of the brand. So this was really good timing.
Yeah. Thanks. A bit short. I keep hearing like,
is he saying this is the perfect end to this meeting?
I don't think maybe is like
Jessie.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have a question.
Mm.
So when we think about building a brand and we're thinking about how we bring motion into it, do we think about motion like its own distinct ingredient, like art direction, type, and illustration? Or do we think of it as a property that applies across all those other ingredients, or both?
Nice question.
Mm. Could you say the first part again? Sorry.
Well, so I was thinking like, like I guess the traditional way of thinking about building a brand are like, what are the components of the brand? What's the illustration? What's the type? What's the color? What's the art direction?
Yeah.
And does motion fit into that system, or is motion, or I guess, or is motion like a property that we actually apply to art direction? We apply it to illustration. We apply it to type. We apply it to illustration.
I think motion, it's not a thing you can see, right? It has to be applied.
Yeah.
But so it has to be, it's an application, but it can inform your decisions on what type of face you select. And so it's
Right.
both.
I think it's interesting that you said that, because when we're coding it, motion objects are very similar to anything else. It's like an object with a bunch of properties and numbers attached. It's like, how long does something last, and like, what's the easing? It's like a property. And we look at a font, and it's like, what's the font and what's the weight? Like, there's numbers in both. So in the matrix, they're very similar in principle, and they can be as modular as one another and like swapped and changed and stuff. So they feel like sort of constituent components of visual elements that are defined in a similarly structural kind of fashion, but it's usually on development to be negotiating with design on like, what are those structures? Like, what easing do you want to use for, images versus text? I think that's like one of the most important things that site we were looking at before was missing, was like cohesion and consistency, because I don't know, it's just so hectic and chaotic. And when it becomes an afterthought, when it's not like a constituent module, I think that's how it tends to turn out most of the time, because it's like, oh, but what if it floated? Like, oh, this could fly in. And it's like, yeah, but why? And how do you tie reins around that? So I'd like to see us try to put motion in an atomic style guide. I think that's where it belongs. It's where it feels like it belongs. We can have like a sort of like set in stone system that we can sample from for whatever we want to.
Yeah.
Right, Gino? I think everyone wants to hear what Gino thinks is motion.
Thanks, Gino.
I agree with everything Doug said.
Cheers.
Motion belongs in a topic design, for sure.
Gino!
Cool.
I think it's also like worth kind of treating it like how we've been treating it that's kind of all the dev side of thing with that. Like I've been asking Dog like so early on, kind of, I've been trying anyway, before we like build stuff. Like we like ask Dog first, so like, well, what, before we get into nitty-gritties, we just like ask Dog what's like possible and stuff. I feel like maybe you could take a similar approach with animation. Like before we settle on the logo, let's say, we just like ask an animator like the sprint process and like which one do you think would work best in animation or like motion, and we can kind of use that as something where we start designing off from as well. Might be cool. So it doesn't become an afterthought.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I need to bounce because I'm finally jumping on a plane after about 4 hours. If you guys are still there in Melbourne in 2 hours, I'll see you soon. Otherwise, I'll see you guys all Monday.
See ya.
Thank you, Jessie.
Bye.
Welcome, Sam. Bye, guys.
You're welcome. Oh, sorry for the
Oh, is everyone just leaving? Okay, bye.
I think we're leaving. This was awesome, Jessie. Thank you so much.
No
Yeah,
worries.
great presentation.
Thanks, Jessie.
Thank you for listening and putting up with me.
I don't know why I'm waving. See you on Monday. Oh, there's Joe. Where were you? Were you in a car?
I was driving.
Oh.
I was being real naughty and like sneaking peeks, but no, it was great.
Yeah, just like.
Yeah, thanks for popping my fig jam cherry. That was awesome.
You can't say
Can't you? Oh, pardon me.
you can't be saying that. It's very
You just
in 2 different tones.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
Bye.
See you later. Nice to meet you all.
And you.